Like to call to order the City of Saugatuck City Council workshop for July 22nd, 2026. Jamie, will you call the roll?
Anderson,
Here.
Clark, Dean,
Here.
Gardner, Muncy,
Here.
Peterson,
Here.
Stanton.
We have a quorum.
I see where you needed me.
Yes. Joe had something come up, a family need. He'll probably get here later in the meeting, and both Russ and Lauren will not be here. So if we could get a motion to excuse Russ and Lauren.
I'll make a motion to excuse Councilmember Gardner and Councilmember Stanton.
Second.
All in favor, say yes.
Yes.
Yes. Any opposed? All right, the motion carries. And then agenda changes. Gregory, did you want to?
Yeah, I'd like to recommend that we change discussion item D, short-term rental licensing ordinance amendment and resolution updating penalty fee for late renewal applications, to be discussed at our next workshop meeting, which would be Wednesday, August 5th, 2026. And that's because I feel that we don't have enough representation here at the desk here to talk about that subject, and with the three council folks that are missing right now.
Get a second?
Second.
This is a roll call vote, correct, Jamie?
Voice vote.
A voice vote. All in favor, say yes.
Yes.
Yes. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Madam Mayor, if I could,
Go
add
ahead.
one more, staff has an addition to the
Yeah.
agenda
Right,
proposal
yep.
as well, so.
Scott's got that
I'll make the
one.
motion. Mayor, move as item 7D, the new 7D, the consent agreement for sanitary sewer service. Is that what you had in mind?
Yes, Scott, thank you.
Okay.
Great.
Need a second.
Need a second on
I'll
this.
second.
All in favor, say yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, that takes us to our guest speaker, and it looks like, oh, no, we don't, he's on the agenda, sorry, my mistake. It takes us to public comment on agenda items only. If there's anyone in the room that wishes to make a comment about something that's on the agenda, come to the podium. Or anyone online who wishes to do that. All right, seeing none, we will move to approval of the regular city council meeting minutes from July 13th. Can I get a motion?
Madam Mayor, I move we approve the regular city council meeting minutes of July 13th, 2026 as presented.
Second.
All in, roll call.
Anderson.
Yes.
Dean.
Yes.
Muncy,
Yes.
Peterson.
Yes.
Motion carries. That takes us to discussion items, and it looks like Dr. Thurikoff, I'm hoping I pronounced your name close to correct.
Yeah, Tierkoff, thank you.
Thurikoff is here with us. Ryan, did you want to set this up for us?
Well, good afternoon, council. Just to say that Dr. Therakoff has actually been doing some research out at Owl Beach in the Saugatuck Harbor natural area as it relates to kind of, beach nourishment. And as you know, a couple of years ago, there was some dredging out in the channel where those dredge spoils were placed on the beach in those areas. And so his team has been kind of taking a look at how long they've lasted, and he has some information to kind of share today on that. And it's really a bit of a timely conversation as well, because the Army Corps is looking to do some dredging again next year. We're on about a 3 to 4 year cycle with them, and they're also kind of trying to figure out where to put those dredge spoils, and whether to do some additional beach nourishment either right on the beach itself, or at least somewhat maybe out a little ways as well. So look forward to
Yeah.
some good information and hopefully some good questions.
And thanks for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. Let's see here. I'm gonna send a request to share my screen. I'll have some slides I'll share up here. All right, perfect. So swap this. Okay, are you just seeing my slides?
No.
Oh, nope. Okay. Let's see here. Saugatuck City Council. Let's see. How about now?
Yes.
Okay. Is it the actual slides, not the note side?
They're both there.
What?
No, just the slides are, it looks like it's just showing the current slide and the next slide, so.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, let's swap that. All right, now is it just one slide?
No.
Really? This is embarrassing. Supposed to be talking about technical prowess, huh? Interesting.
We could see it.
You could, okay. All right, let's see here. Sorry about that.
It's nice when younger people struggle with technology.
I know, right?
We're all in it together, absolutely.
Yes, we are.
Okay. That is not what we want. All right, hold on a second. My graduate student's on here, and she's probably loving the fact that
If you want to
I'm,
mute
uh,
and start swearing, feel free.
All right. I don't know why this is being so weird, but what about now? Do you see my slide now?
Yeah,
Yeah, that works.
All right, we're gonna go with that.
Oh, there we
okay.
go.
that's perfect.
Okay. So, I'm Ethan Tierkoff. Clearly, after like 10 years of using Zoom, don't know how to use it anymore, but I do understand sediment transport better than I do Zoom. So we'll go with that. So my lab, and Emma is one of the graduate students here in my group. We are a coastal processes lab. So we study all things coastal change, primarily focused here in the Great Lakes region. So I'm at Michigan State University in the Department of Geography, Environment, and Spatial Sciences. And so I'm going to talk through kind of three main things that we've been doing in association with Oval Beach. One of which, like Ryan had mentioned, we've been thinking and sort of examining the sand nourishment that was done in 2024 in association with the dredging of the harbor, and basically using satellite imagery to see what happens to that sand, and did it persist? How long did it persist? Do we have any indication of where that sand ended up? All those kinds of questions, and kind of use that to guide what might make sense moving forward if there's an opportunity for more nourishment. In that, we have also been really interested in thinking about what's happening out in the lake and what's happening on the lake bottom. So a lot of times when people study coastal change, they focus on the beach, but the beach is only a small portion of the total coastal area. Most of what's happening is actually underwater on the lake bed. It's very dynamic, and it's largely a black box. We haven't really kind of unlocked what's exactly happening out there in the lake and how that sand is sort of cycling from the beach to the near shore. So I'm going to show you some stuff that Emma and I have been working on, both using satellite data as well, but then also field measurements and actually going out there and trying to understand how that sand is moving offshore and onshore at Oval Beach. So the first thing I'm going to show you are some data sets from Planet Labs, which is a satellite that basically collects every day as long as it's cloud free. So it's going out there, it's getting high resolution imagery, and we can basically track events like a beach nourishment or nearshore sand placement in whenever there's a cloud free sky, which we're Michigan, so certain times of the year not so easy. But you'll see that it's well enough that we can get a good sense of when that sand was deposited, where it went, and sort of the fate of it. So you're seeing here, started in June 2024, went through July, and by August, this lobe of sand was placed there, and I think they had finished up the dredging. And so if we fast forward over to the next year, so this purple line here is where the shoreline was in August of 2024. And so, going to, kind of through the fall, you can actually kind of see where that purple line is, and you can see where the actual shoreline was during whatever time period we took one of these satellite images. So as we go through time, you can see that area where that placement occurred, the shoreline is migrating landward in that spot. And we're starting to see a little bit on the flanks of that sand migrating, kind of north and south. When you go and fast forward to present day, of course, that lobe of sand that was placed in June of 2024 or summer of 2024, that's all, kind of moved away. And the shoreline is kind of restabilized to more of a straight shoreline shape. We see indications. So this was April 2025, and then here's June of 2026. So about a month ago, you can see that the beach is a little bit wider, now than it was in June of 2026. But of course, all that sand has moved away. So, and it's spread out over a much larger area. So I think the takeaway from this is quickly, within a year, it's out of the initial nourishment area. There's some indication that it moved north and south and kind of replenished parts of the area, but there's a lot more indication that that sand's probably moved away from the initial placement area, and either away as in downdrift and, kind of out, or off into the lake. And that's what really got us interested in trying to unravel that and try to understand, okay, so it's going out into the lake. You can actually see these bars here in the near shore. What's happening with these sandbars? Are they actually well connected to the beach, meaning that sand can basically flux out into the near shore, it sits out there and then, kind of comes back? Or is it just kind of building up out there and it's kind of largely losing it from the beach system? So kind of seems like something you would think that we would have figured out, beach, bars, we know these things exist, but it's really not something that's been explored in the Great Lakes. And so that's really what we're trying to do now, is understand how connected basically is the beach to these bars and the nearshore system. And can we use that to help you guys predict what's going to happen to Oval Beach moving forward if we know something about what's actually going on with those bars? So I'm going to show you the actual data from that nourishment. So each one of these lines is just a little transect that we examine shoreline change on. So the cooler colors mean that sand was actually kind of gaining in that spot. And so the shoreline was moving lakeward. So that's kind of a good thing. And then the negative colors, or the warmer colors, those are basically the shoreline's moving landward. So we're having erosion in those spots. So in the year prior to the nourishment in 2024, most of this shoreline area was actually moving lakeward. And this is expected because lake level was falling from the high in 2020. The beaches were kind of coming back. They were getting wider. Actually, this kind of area right here at Oval Beach had a pretty high rate of shoreline movement lakeward, which is kind of in the middle of this embayment. So we typically see that in these coastal areas. Then if we fast forward a year later, we've had that nourishment. Obviously, the shoreline went way lakeward when that sand was placed. And then we're also seeing on the adjacent areas quite a bit of shoreline movement in the positive during that period as well. And then if you fast forward to now, of course, we've lost a lot of that shoreline position because the shoreline has retreated back to kind of an equilibrium. And then these areas adjacent to it are still gaining, which gives us an indication that maybe some of that sand is still kind of moving around in the adjacent areas. So in our nearshore bar, so what Emma actually did was went in and digitized digitized these bars. So she looked at the picture, she kind of clicked on it in the computer program. And the takeaway from all of these squiggly lines is that basically we really see no coherent signal of what these bars are doing. So that basically tells us that there's nothing that's like, well, always during the winter, these bars do this thing, or during the summer, they do this thing. So, and part of that, I think, is that during this time period, new sand was getting added with this nourishment. So that's going to make it, much more dynamic. Really, the only kind of consistent thing that we saw was that that outer bar, the most lakeward bar, was moving around a lot over the course of a year. And that's a good thing because it's basically taking the brunt of all those waves as the storms come in. And so you'd expect that as the storm comes in, that bar basically trips the waves, slows it down, that bar moves a little bit back and forth. But the inner bars, these ones that are closest to the beach, they're moving around all over the place. So sand's going here, it's going there. And that's really tough to sort of examine unless we actually get out there and physically monitor it with our instruments and try to make sense of, okay, this storm happened, or, sand was nourished and we got to get out there and map it. So that's where the actual field mapping comes into play. And so that's what we've been doing just over the last really 6 months or so, maybe like 9 months since last November. And so we've got sort of two instruments that we're using for that. So you can see Emma here on the right, we're using a high precision GPS system so we can actually map the beach and into the water, basically to wading depth to about 2 centimeters. And then we have a remote controlled catamaran that's got both a sonar and a GPS on it. And that's what we can actually drive out into the lake to map the lake bottom. So we put those two instruments together and we can generate a full 3-dimensional map of what the lake bed and the beach look like at any point in time. So we did this in November of 25. We did it in May of 26. And essentially what those two maps allow us to do is to look at how those bars are moving, how the beach is moving, how is that sand actually moving back and forth, and are we basically pushing sand out into the lake, but then we quickly get it back to the beach, or is it more complicated than that? And so what we see initially, and I'll show you an easier example to kind of see what's going on in a second, but both these areas where I'm pointing to the arrow, that's areas where essentially sand that eroded on the beach is getting deposited out in the lake. So this red line is basically the shoreline. And so all this is sand that's gaining right near the shoreline, and then that sand that's getting out into a little deeper water. And essentially what it is it's a bar that was out there in November that's kind of split off and then gained more sand by beach erosion. It's really clear when you look at this kind of picture. So all that red, that's all erosion. So, and actually a lot of erosion. So it's almost 3 or over 3 feet of loss of the elevation on the beach here at Oval Beach during the period from November to May. And so we can actually look at the volume of all of this material, and volumetrically, we actually find a lot of it out here in the shallow nearshore areas. So all these blue areas, that's sand that's gaining. So we can find a lot of the sand, and that gives us a sense of, well, okay, we know where it went. Now the question is, does it actually come back to the beach, or is it just going to stay out there? And that's really what Emma is going to be exploring over the coming months is, what are these dynamics related to storms and seasonal events and things like that? One of the other things, other ways that you can look at it is actually in cross-section view. I think this is sometimes easier to see. So all this area in orange, that's all the beach that eroded away. And these areas in blue, that's where all that sand is going out in the lake. So it's out there. Actually, it's, because that sand's getting spread out over a large area, it's 2.5 times more erosion that's happening than actually deposition on the lake bed. And so that actually kind of matches a lot of what we know about with how Michigan's beaches behave. And I'll talk more about it in a second, kind of the summary. But Michigan's beaches tend to have basically this erosion dominance where they will lose a lot more beach and it gets out into the lakeshore, and then it takes a long time to come back. And if you kind of think back over time, there's a period from about 2000 to 2013, 2014, where water level was really low for a really long time period. And we actually gained a lot of Michigan's beaches back, but it took over a decade. And then we rose water level up to 2020. We had lots of erosion, and now we're only about 6 years post high lake level. But water level has been kind of fluctuating, and we've had storms on top of that. And so we're still in this kind of recovery phase. And that's what we're really trying to sort of unravel is, how long does it take to get things back to the way, or do they ever go back to sort of where it was 20 years ago. So with that, basically, kind of the punchline of examining the nourishment from 2024 is that it's moved away from the initial area that it was placed. There's some indication that there's some deposition north and south. I think there's, high likelihood that a lot of that sand's also moved either away from the site or out into the nearshore area where it's kind of sitting in those bars. Because those bars are very active. They're moving around a lot, not in predictable ways, though. If you were to take one of my intro classes, I would teach you that bars do one thing during storms and another during calm periods. And that's not at all what's happening here at Oval Beach and a lot of other Michigan beaches. So there's kind of this interesting dynamic that we're also revealing in some of this high resolution mapping, which matches though with some of our previous work that shows that we have this kind of dominance of erosion conditions versus accretionary conditions. And I think if you think about, the kind of the dominant wind conditions that we have along the Michigan coast, so we have westerly winds. Yeah, it's calm sometimes, but a lot of times, the lake might look something like this, right? Where it's not really a big storm, but it's not calm either. And those kinds of conditions are very prevalent, and they make it really hard for that sand to go from the bars back to the beach. And so being able to give you a sense of, well, yeah, maybe only like 10% of the time do you actually get that to happen, might give you a better indication of what to expect moving forward, and how long recovery might take after storms or nearshore placement where that sand might actually go. And I know one of the things that was mentioned is maybe putting that sand in deeper water. I think this kind of research and understanding how that material is actually moving in that deeper water and whether there's any likelihood that if you put it in 8 feet of water that over the next year it's going to get onto the beach. That's the kind of stuff that we're going to be able to unravel by looking at what's going on with the onshore and offshore sand transport. So we've got our lab website there. There's my email address. There's Emma out in Lake Michigan at Oval Beach in November. And I don't know if there's time for questions, but I'm happy to take any.
Yeah, for sure. Questions?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Did your work look at what adding sand and beach nourishment potentially does in terms of creating bars that might not behave in normal patterns and thus create rip currents, due to the erosion of a bar in one spot, thus causing a situation where you have a rip current on a beach?
Right. So we didn't look specifically at that with rip currents. It could if we were able to get out there and actually map using those 3D techniques sort of immediately post the nourishment and kind of track how that is. Because I think that's, getting those breaks in the bar and having those funnels of currents through those bars. I know there's a lot of work. Guy Meadows, who some of you may have heard his name, he's looked at sort of breaks and bars as being a potential spot for those currents. So no, we did not specifically look at that, but the techniques that we have, if we were able to time it around a nourishment, we could look at that.
Yeah, I'm interested in that because
Yeah.
obviously it's a huge public safety concern, and I think all of us would be very keen to understand
Yeah.
what best practices
Mm-hmm.
in beach nourishment are, and from your studies.
Right.
So anything you can learn from that, I think would be very helpful, not only for us, but for a number of
Yeah.
communities along the lakeshore.
Absolutely.
I have a question. So how is what you're finding at Oval Beach, how does that compare with other beachfront communities or other
Mhm.
areas along the lake?
Yeah. So I think part of what is really great about Oval Beach and why we actually focused on Oval Beach is the lack of armoring that's adjacent to it. So I would say that Oval Beach is functioning a lot more naturally. So that's where a lot of that dynamic is happening, where you're able to naturally allow sand to cycle onshore and offshore and back. So I think in that way, it does behave pretty similarly to other places that lack, revetments and seawalls and things like that. I would say that also you have a lot more sand, and it's very similar sort of geomorphic setting that in that the beach erosion can kind of be found, if you will, out there in the where that sand gets deposited. We've seen that even in places along Lake Huron, where you have these kind of unobstructed beach and nearshore systems. It's quite a bit different than if you go to a place where you have seawalls. That sand actually gets pushed much further offshore, making it much harder to actually get that recovery. So I would say the results are similar, and they can inform other beaches that are like it. But that's a big part of why our study focused on or wanted to focus on Oval Beach, because you have that kind of natural dynamic.
Great. Other questions? This is fascinating. Ryan?
Yeah, if I could just maybe build on Scott's question a little bit, and maybe the answer is this, you don't know, and maybe some of it's this kind of theory and still what you're studying, but if obviously Army Corps of Engineers is kind of asking our thoughts, are we okay with them placing the next set of nourishment on about 4 to 8 feet of water, or do we want it back on the beach? And I mean, to your exact point, Scott, about rip currents and sandbars. I mean, it's the discussion that Mark and I had today. It was like, if they place it at 4 to 8 feet, are we likely to have more of those issues? Is it better to have it placed on the beach itself? I mean, do you have any thoughts on that?
I think that, some of it also depends on what the goal is in terms of having that placement, right? So I think that placing it as close to the beach as possible is going to give it the best shot to weld to the beach and nourish the beach, right? So if you're putting it right up against the beach, lake level keeps coming down, you'll get some of that sand. Obviously, I showed that it doesn't stay exactly in that same configuration. It's going to spread itself out. But in general, there was an accretionary signal over the course of the couple of years after that. I think that the deeper you put it out, the more likely you are to strand it offshore. Now, whether that takes the form, and I think this would be a very interesting part of the analysis that the mapping could reveal, whether that just kind of gets spread out and adds to those bars and stays kind of continuous, or breaks off and you get the potential for rip currents and sort of funneled channels and things like that. I mean, we definitely saw, and Emma could speak to this, that inner bar area was not this like long linear feature that always stayed perfectly offshore. I mean, it welds to the shoreline, it breaks off, it segments. So yeah, I do think, and I'm couching this with we haven't studied this and we haven't modeled it or anything like that, but I think that just the physics suggests that the more you put that sand out in the near shore, the more it's going to try to equilibrate over those bars, and the more dynamic those bars are going to be, basically, and they're already really dynamic. So, I'm always, I always kind of hear, but this is interesting that you're asking that, because most people ask the question, well, if I put it on the beach, am I going to keep my beach? Right? Versus, I think that it's the right kind of question to ask. If we put it out in deeper water, is it going to actually create a hazard? So, yeah.
Well, we'd like to keep the beach, but I think you've shown us pretty clearly that it goes away.
It goes away,
at least on the
right.
main beach itself, right? I mean, it's there. Does it come back to the beach? I think that's really interesting. So
Yeah, right.
So what I picked up though is to put the sand from the feds as close to the beach as you can, close to the water as you can. Is that what I picked up? That's what I thought he said. Hello?
Oh, sorry. I thought you were talking to. Can you repeat the question?
Yes. What I picked up was that what you're saying is it's best for the Army Corps of Engineers to put the new sand as close to the old sand as there is above the water?
That's usually I think the preferred, because then you're giving it the best shot to attach to the beach and kind of stay as part of the beach. Versus, I think it's just based on sort of the way the waves work in the near shore when you're putting it out in the deeper water, especially going out to like 8 feet, and deeper than that. It just has to travel that much more back to the beach, right? And we have a paper they published a couple of years ago that shows kind of the way the different waves work along the Michigan coast, and those calm waves that actually roll that sand back towards the beach. They happen, it varies, but less than a third of the time, if you think about all the waves that happen. Most of the waves that we have are much more efficient at pulling sand back out into the water. So exactly. So if the aim is to keep the sand out there, then you would want to put it in deeper water. But if the aim is to kind of spread it out right along the shore, you want to get it as close to it as possible.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Anything?
Good.
Great. Thanks so much. We really appreciate your
Yeah,
joining us.
thank you.
Fascinating research.
Mhm.
Thank you. We'll be excited to share updates as we get out there this fall.
Awesome. All right, that takes us to 7B, proposal for design engineering services for Elizabeth Street improvements. Mark. Thanks for being with us.
Yeah, and I think John was supposed to be online. I don't see him currently online.
There he is.
so-
There he
I'm
is.
here. So yeah, this is it's the scope for to start the design project for Elizabeth Street that we talked about, last week. With the proposal of the new water main, the street, changing the sidewalks, doing all the work we had talked about, updating water services with like copper rules. Continuing that sidewalk from Allegan Street up further to kind of make it then cross over and then down in front of the school and whatnot to get us a continuous sidewalk there. We're just looking at the steps to move forward for the design phase. So what we're here for today to talk about, and John can help with any other questions if I can't answer.
Questions? I'm sure everybody's had a chance to read it. Seemed pretty straightforward.
Yeah, I mean, I think, we have discussed this before, and I think there was pretty strong consensus that there is a concern about that corner, that T intersection basically of
Mhm.
Elizabeth with Old Allegan, or Allegan, I should say. Because, the sight lines are difficult for cars and there's not a contiguous sidewalk. Ryan, was that part of your kind of safe route to schools discussion or?
So yes, that route was one of, a few that were walked, and the school's definitely
Okay.
been pretty clear in expressing the desire to see that missing section completed.
Yeah, I actually walked that section with the school superintendent and John that day. actually. So.
Okay, good.
Yep.
Madam Mayor, the only question I have, what was the decision made with the trees by Bayview?
I don't know if we got a final decision on that, John. Did we by chance talk with them about the trees by Bayview there?
No final decision. We'll work through that during design. We'll have some more conversations with them. Our proposal does include some of that additional survey work is along Bayview there so that we can accommodate either option that we end up going with.
Thank you.
Okay.
Great. Any other questions? Okay, this will be on Monday's agenda. Next is the historic district sign proposal on page 12. Grayson, thanks for joining us.
Hi, everyone. Yep, so not much has changed here. The design's still the same. We just went and got 2 additional quotes, and actually the most cost-effective one was at the first one that came from Concept A. We weren't able to find anyone local that is able to make the signs nearby. Both of the local companies that we went to would have had to go to their wholesaler, which is national as well. So we feel that Concept A would be a perfectly fine choice.
So HCS, they were gonna send this work out?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Wow, what a price difference. I appreciate you getting those quotes, because that's what we want to look at, but wow.
Great. Any other questions? Pretty straightforward. Thanks, Grayson. Appreciate it. This will be on the agenda Monday as well. So the new 7D is the sanitary sewer service agreement. Ryan, you want to talk us through that?
Yeah, and thank you, council, for kind of the last minute. I just wanted to have a moment to quick talk about this, and obviously it'll be in your packet for Monday. But similar to the fire department, their parcels, along Blue Star Highway, there's another property along Blue Star, kind of as you approach the Allegan intersection that's interested in connecting to the sanitary sewer on Maple Street for the purpose of they're intending to build a boutique hotel. So in order for that property to connect to the sanitary sewer, the township and city need to come to a consent agreement to allow for that connection. Unlike the fire department connection, this sewer capacity would count towards the township's allocated capacity. They're kind of, maxed out in the township, but had another project that kind of fell off. And this project would take its place, is my understanding from the township manager. But the fees themselves, as far as connection, would come to the city. The sewer treatment allocation would count towards the township. Otherwise, the form of the agreement and terms are quite similar as far as what you saw with the fire department agreement that you recently approved. So not a lot of big changes there, just kind of some differences as far as allocations, and in this case, the fees aren't being waived. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Chris, where is this? Is it Maple and Allegan? You said?
Near there, yeah. On Monday, I'll make sure then and get you kind of a GIS image to show you kind of exactly the location
Is
of
it
where it's at.
churches?
So
Then on the other side of it, so it's the church and it's that little blue brick house or stone house right there?
yeah, I'll get you exact location to kind of show you the property. Yep.
Are there any others that are gonna want to do this too as we go through this?
It's possible. Yeah, it's possible. And that's, kind of some of the discussion that we've had with the township that, the existing sewer operations contract allows for properties along Maple Street. They're immediately adjacent, anticipated, really residential properties, connecting and having a right to connect. But then there was this mechanism kind of added in that requires these separate agreements, which really kind of have to be looked at on a case by case basis. There's some larger parcels. In this case, it's a fairly large parcel. The original development was probably going to be some condominiums, so they've changed their thoughts and project. I have checked with our engineers just to make sure that there's no infrastructure issues with the additional sewer flows. The infrastructure is adequate to handle the boutique hotel flow. So,
And it's all at the owner's expense, sole expense?
correct. Yep. They would pay the connection fees. They would be paying for the connection to the Maple Street sewer line. In fact, this is, a little bit, quite timely in that, everything's kind of dug up right now. And if there's going to be a connection, or at least the stub for it, we want to make sure and kind of get that in before we repair the roadway. And so we don't have to, dig things up again later. So,
And I believe I read staff is recommending approval?
yes.
Okay. I don't know, did you get any reaction prior to this meeting from council members Gardner or Clark? I know they've.
I haven't heard anything either way.
Okay.
Yep.
Any other questions? All right, so this will also be on Monday's agenda. That takes us to the second public comment period, and during this period, anybody can comment about anything. So is there anyone in the room? Welcome. You can come to the podium and give us your name, and you'll have, and what city you live in, and you'll have 3 minutes to speak.
Yes, my name is Sarah Edwards, and I am with the U.S. Small Business Administration, and currently I am in Kalamazoo, Michigan. I'm here right now in Allegheny County to let everyone know about our disaster loan program. This is for anybody who was impacted by the April the 10th through the 21st storms that happened, for homeowners, businesses, renters, and nonprofits. We offer for homeowners who might have suffered structural damage to any of their property up to $500,000 of loan aid available. Yeah. And for renters as well. If anybody, you might not own a home, but your car was impacted or you maybe lost some property, up to $100,000 for them. As well, businesses, of course, up to $2 million for any structural damage and $2 million for economic injury. So if your customers were impacted, but you weren't, and you noticed 6 months from now that your business slowed down, up to $2 million for that. We have a disaster resource center that's located in Gunplain Township, so it's a little far away. But you can also reach us online. That's www.sba.gov/disaster. If anyone's interested in applying, I suggest you do so. We are taking applications for this current disaster through August the 31st of 2026. For economic injury disaster loan, that will be all the way through to January of 2027. So we try to give everybody pretty much a lot of time. Also, this loan, you wouldn't have to pay it for 1 year. And so a lot of people, they're waiting on their insurance. We oftentimes are able to process a lot faster than the insurance companies. And so if you are approved, you have 1 year that you don't have to repay. If your insurance, you can get that figured out, then, you can then have aid available as well as traditional insurance. I'm hoping that the town council, that you might be able to share this information on all of your social channels, which is part of the reason I'm here. Just because we're really getting the word out, we're hoping that everybody can take advantage of this while it's open. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you for coming.
Yeah.
I appreciate you making time to do that.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you so
Great.
much.
Anyone else in the room wish to make a comment? Anyone online wish to make a comment? All right, that takes us to a closed session. So if I can get a motion to go into closed session.
Madam Mayor, I make a motion to move into closed session pursuant to MCL 15.268 H to consider material exempt from discussion or disclosure by state or federal statute.
I'll second.
It's a roll call vote?
Anderson,
Yes.
Dean,
Yes.
Muncy,
Yes.
Peterson.
Yes.
Motion carries. All right, thanks for coming, everybody. All right, we're back in open session. Council comments. Chris?
Yes, and I'm glad I made the quorum. People usually aren't that happy to see me. Again, summer's here, things are great, and I do want to recommend or thank the mayor. Your comments on the stressed beach towns to WHTC were right on.
Oh, thank you.
Very nicely
Well,
done.
now that answers this question. Does anybody listen to these? Thanks.
Not much to report. Thank you for allowing me to be late, and I apologize.
Oh.
But, hopefully it won't happen again.
Life happens. Scott?
Nothing tonight, Mayor.
Gregory?
Please join Walker Consultants and Associates along with the Parking Task Force as we've got some pretty good ideas so far, and we're kind of coming to a close of our Parking Task Force duties to present some recommendations to council for better parking downtown. We've got a lot of things, information boards that we'll be having at Music in the Park tonight between 7 and 9 p.m. is our community outreach part of this program. And there'll be some of us there from some of the members there from the committee, as well as John Dorsett from Walker and Associates, and he's bringing his wife, and we're all going to have a fun time at Music in the Park. We've got Don Middlebrooks. He'll be performing. Don Middlebrook started Music in the Park with me and John Jerome back in the day, about 25 years ago or so now. And so it'll be a lot of fun. And I'll also be blowing bubbles.
Right.
So, and I'll be doing that in front of everyone. And so we should have a good time with that.
Great. Good meeting. That's it from me. So who would like to make a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Okay.
Lots of seconds.
All in
Okay.
favor, say yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Any opposed? Meeting adjourned.